Basic real estate questions that we're going to start off. If it goes well, we'll keep doing this. So send all your questions. We'll start with some basic stuff, and then we'll kind of get more into in depth as more questions come in.
So we got some DMs.
Okay.
For some questions.
Well.
So, question one: what does a first-time home buyer need to get started buying a home?
For me, when I first started buying, when I went to go buy my first house, the first thing I think you need to do is go see a lender and get pre-qualified to see what you qualify for.
I always tell people that if I go shopping and I don't have a budget, of course I'm going to want the most expensive thing I can find.
I'm the worst.
Even like when I had glasses, I would like pick out the Prada glasses, and I never wore them. I don't need those.
Right.
So it's hard to, if you go out and shop without a budget, look at stuff that is out of your price range, and then look at stuff that's in your price range.
Right. And what a lot of people don't understand, because Cozi and I were both in this situation where our credit wasn't in the best shape, or we didn't have the down payment money. The lender will guide you in the right direction of how to fix that credit and how to get to where you're able to buy that house. So it's a scary proposition.
Absolutely.
I call it the financial colonoscopy, because everything's not laid out, like all your missteps, everything, people have student loan debt, people have, a bunch of, auto loans and stuff like that, but you can still make progress towards your goal. And like, we also work with a credit repair company that we send people to that really ramp up that process.
The other thing, even kind of like when I did it, I did have to fix my credit, so I went to a lender, but there was things that I would have paid off, and that she was like, no, you don't pay that off.
Right.
Pay this off instead, right? To where if you don't have that education, that's where that lender is really going to come into.
100%. And what the one that shocked me the most was your student loans. Like, I didn't have a lot of student loan debt because I didn't go to school very long. Semester and a half, and so I paid the minimum, because when you're making those payments recurringly, the student loan is a federal debt, so it helps boost your credit, which is something I didn't know at all.
And the longer you have a loan sitting out there, right? Like, once you pay something off, it's almost like a ding to your credit. So the longer, because I did the same thing with student loans, I just paid the minimum and kept that loan sitting out there forever, because then it shows that you're making on-time payments for a long period of time.
The credit system is kind of it's a wonky thing, but it definitely, there's a system and there's a game to be played. And talk to your local lender, and they'll help you through that process. Use them as a resource, and we've got several that we use that we can help you with that process.
How much money down do you need to get a mortgage?
That's a tricky question, because like when I first bought my house, I asked for closing costs, and I asked for things like that, where I ended up buying my first house. I didn't have to come up with any money down.
I've seen people get money back at the closing table.
Right. So there's definitely ways to do that, but the best way is to have some money down, so you get the best rates and you get the best mortgages out there. But there's FHA programs that are 3% down, 5% down, obviously 20% down. There's also first-time home buyer programs. There's, like we're in Montana, so the Montana Board of Housing has great programs. Mm-hmm. So, again, your local lender will be able to guide you to the right program that fits you the best.
So, staying on the financial part,
right.
What kind of cost do you need to expect during the closing process?
Right.
So as a buyer, there's a couple different costs that a home inspection comes out of your pocket as a buyer. The lender fees, appraisals, closing fees, it kind of varies depending on the price of the house.
Right.
So, but that's something that you can ask for the seller to pay for you.
Right.
As part of your negotiation.
Is there like a percentage that you should expect, like of the home price or something, like?
That all depends on the program.
Right.
Because like FHA's got a certain amount that you have to pay. Like VA buyers pay zero zero of those
They pay
fees.
zero in closing costs?
They not
Or-
closing costs,
Down.
0%
Or zero down, okay.
Yeah.
Right. But closing costs, but then like taxes are prorated. So normally the seller pays their taxes. So those are paid in arrears. So
Yeah, that gets confusing.
That gets confusing as well. But
Title fees are typically like $1,000.
right. And then you have your appraisal fee, which is normally $300 to $500. And that's the hard part about real estate is that every deal there's a different curveball. There's it's not like cut and dry or a certain percentage, but and then a lot of in the market that we're in right now, it's a little cooler. So sellers are paying closing costs and that sort of thing. So it all
That's
depends.
another kind of, and as a real estate agent, we work really closely with the mortgage lenders, right? So that's something that, hey, go talk to your lender. They'll tell you the exact amount that you're going to need in closing costs, and then we can negotiate that as part of your offer. So I'm going to segue into the next question, which is, how do you negotiate to get the price your client wants?
Right. My favorite part of the deal, by far. I always say ask for the moon and expect some stars. It's kind of my little line that I always use. Because in a market like this, when it is a little cooler, sellers are more willing to give those things. So
Negotiate.
yeah, negotiate those things. And Cozi puts it really well with sellers, like what's more important or the buyers. What's more important, the closing costs? Like, do you not have the money down, or is the total cost of the house? Because those, for each individual buyer, you need to figure out what's important to them in the deal. The negotiation, and when you're coming from a place of power, when you don't need the closing costs, then you're going to be able to get the best price of the house.
So I have a question.
Shoot.
I don't have a microphone. This might be better. Okay, so have you ever had a client ask you to negotiate a deal? Say they want to buy this $550,000 house, and they come at you and they're like, "But we only want to offer $450." Do you ever tell them no?
No, they're the boss, right? Like when you're buying a house, you're the boss. I have to follow your direction, right? I'll follow what you want to do. I will give you stats and facts, and then help you make a decision. And there's different.
So you help guide them.
Yeah, and just being like, hey, here's what the comps are. This is what the house down the street sold for. The seller knows that as well, right? So, and it just depends on the seller, right? Some people would just not respond. Some people always counter. Right? So it just depends on situations. But yeah, so as my client, you're the boss, and
you never know. The seller might have a hardship that they need to get off that house rather quickly, and it might work out. They might counter back a little higher, or they might, like Cozi said, they might not counter back at all. They might get offended. But that's why your real estate agent will, like Cozi, will guide you in the, show you the comps, show you what's been selling in that area in that size of house for that price. But as real estate agents, our job is to follow the client's wants and needs.
So next question, once I find a home I want, what is the timeline to closing?
Right.
So just kind of depends on if it's a new construction, right? If the house isn't done, that's going to change your timeline.
Right.
Typically in the Billings market, in Helena as well, it's about 45 days. What dictates that, though, is our appraisers. There's not a lot of appraisers in our market, so they get busy. The appraiser might be out 3 weeks once the lender gets the appraisal ordered. There's 30-day closings. There's 2-week closings.
Right.
It all just is dependent on your financing.
It also puts you in a position of power if, like, say you're a cash buyer, and that seller again is in a hardship and needs to close fast. Your offer is going to look a lot stronger if you're like, hey, I can close this in
10 days.
10 days.
Right.
Right? Like, and they're going to take your offer probably over a deal where it's a VA buyer who they have more inspections and more things, and less, the longer the deal goes out, the less likely the chances of it closes, right? There's more hiccups. Where if you're a cash buyer and you can come in and buy it in 10 days, you're in a much better position. Unfortunately, most Americans are not in the position to be paying, cash for a house. So I think typically we're seeing 30 to 45 days.
Yep.
For a smooth deal, because you've got home inspections, you've got appraisals. If you're a VA buyer, you've got VA inspections, and then there's timelines for all of those things to be checked off the list.
Hot button subject question. Next. How do realtors get paid?
How do realtors get paid? Right.
They don't work for free?
No.
Weird.
So this was obviously just a big thing with the NAR settlement that just kind of went through. So there's a couple different ways realtors get paid. Either the seller pays both the listing agent and the buying agent's commission. The home buyer can pay the buyer's agent's commission. It's always been negotiable. Commission has always been negotiable. Who pays it has always been negotiable. But yeah, so it's typically either buyer or seller, combination of the two, that kind of thing.
Right, and it's typically in the industry standard for the last 30 years has been the seller pays both the selling agent and the buyer's agent, but that's always been negotiable, and so now everything needs to be disclosed, and so the buyer's agent knows what the seller agent's getting paid, or that client can choose to pay their agent to represent them if the seller's not paying any realtor commissions.
Okay, so
So how did just kind of follow up with that, how did the NAR lawsuit change things? And like what's different now, and how does it kind of affect buyers?
Right, so the
and sellers?
commissions have always been negotiable. This isn't that hasn't changed at all. Now it just has to be disclosed and negotiated up front.
yeah, it's just more disclosure up front, right? And it was always disclosed in like a listing agreement, but now a buyer signs an agreement as well,
Right.
disclosing.
And me as a home builder, I think this is a great change. Realtors, I think, should always disclose. Like that's the biggest thing in our business is disclosure. And so the buyer should know what they're paying for and what they're getting, what services they're getting in return.
So if it's always been negotiable like this, why all of a sudden was it like a big...
There was a lawsuit.
Oh, gotcha.
Yep.
Okay, so now we're going to kind of talk, well, we'll keep going. Who pays for a home inspection and why do you need one?
Right. That's part of the buyer's cost that's part of the buyer's fees when they're buying a home. When you're buying a used home, as I like to call them, because I'm a home builder, I like to sell new homes.
Existing.
It's a great idea to get a home inspection. Again, there's good home inspectors and there's bad home inspectors. That's why you should do your due diligence and get referrals and that kind of thing with home inspectors, because they're going to go in and they're going to inspect the houses for unknown, undisclosed,
unseen things, right?
Yeah.
So when we're out shopping for a home and we walk through and we're in a house for 10, 15 minutes, you're not checking if there's a leak under the sink. You're not getting up on the roof and checking if there's shingles blown off, right? Like you're not looking at that stuff. So when you hire a home inspector, they're in there for 3-4 hours. And they come up with, a list of different things that they found. They go through like courses to tell them, what to look for. And then you go with your agent typically, and you go meet with the home inspector. You walk through the house again. So it's great because it gives you another shot to get back in the house and really look at things. and they'll, show you like, hey, there's history, like this has been leaking in the past. There's, past water damage in a cabinet. It's not currently leaking. Okay, right, move on, whatever. They go kind of top to bottom. It's kind of a honey-do list. Home inspectors know a lot about right? They know a little bit about everything. They're not the expert on plumbing. They're not the expert on roofing, whatever. But that's something that you can then go negotiate with the seller of being like, hey, home inspector saw this. Let's have a plumber go look at it, right? And it's another negotiating part in the home building process.
Right.
Home buying, but even buying a new construction house, have a home inspector go. They, check everything out and.
Right. They're going to crawl in the attic, look for structural
Crawl
problems.
places you don't want to go.
Yeah, they're going to look for, foundation issues, mold. They're going to do a radon test. So they protect the buyer in the home buying process.
Okay, so I'm going to keep going with buying. What happens if you back out of buying a house? So when let's say I have a client, they want to write an offer, I'll go through the whole buy sell with them and talk about every way for them to terminate that agreement, get their earnest money back, move on to the next house. They do have quite a few protections, right? You have that home inspection. So let's say you go in and get a home inspection and it's just too much. You just don't want to take it on, or you negotiate it and you can't come to an agreement. You can back out and get your money back. There's like 5 different ways to terminate a contract and move on.
Right.
So.
Like there's an insurance contingency. So if the insurance adjuster goes out or your insurance company goes out and they pull the history of the house and say there was, we're in Montana, so hail's real prevalent. So say there's a hail claim and the people took the money and didn't fix the roof or the windows. So the house is uninsurable. Then you're able to get out of the deal that way. There's the home inspection, like Cozi said. There's also the appraisal contingency. The bank is going to have you get an appraisal. So if the house appraises for less than you're under contract for, then the buyer's either able to not buy that house, or they can cover the difference.
Negotiate that.
Yeah,
Yep.
That's another negotiation. So if you're past all of your contingency dates and then you back out, Cozi, what happens then?
So according basically to the buy sell, there's like a couple different things that can happen. They can demand that you perform. So the seller can demand that you purchase the house. They can let you go, but demand that they keep your earnest money, or they can, you can end up in a lawsuit, basically having to pay damages if, right, so.
They could force you to perform to buy that house because you're in a legally binding contract, and that's why it is important to hire a realtor, because if you don't know the laws and the contingency dates, you can get caught and be forced to buy a house that you don't want.
So home inspection we talked about. Okay, so now let's talk about selling.
My favorite.
So when you are, hold on, I just saw one in here I was going to do. How do you assess a home's value when selling?
So, Cozi, there's a couple of different ways to do this. The comparative market analysis is your typical way to do it. So you go back in the last year.
6 months.
6 months. I don't use this. You go back and you see in that area the comparables of the house that you're selling. So you go back and you look and see what those houses, same size, same type.
Right. Similar size, similar age, similar condition, if you can find it, what those homes have sold for in the last 6 months to a year, depending on what you can find. What's currently, Levi likes to go kind of the opposite route and look at like what's your competition, right? So Levi likes to look at the houses that are on the market. I do a little mixture of both to see who you're competing with, And then when I go back and look at these comparable homes, then we make adjustments, right? There's, you're never going to find two of the exact same home. So if there's one more garage taller, or if there's a square footage difference, or if one has a fireplace, or if one has, like quartz countertops and these things, you make adjustments on pricing for all of those.
And I like the competitive, I like to call it the competitive analysis. So like if Cozi has a house listed down the street that's about the same size, about the same amenities, that kind of stuff, and it's been on the market 60 days, then I'm gonna price my house lower because the market is the market. The market dictates the price of your house. Every seller thinks that their house is nicer than their neighbor's. And if the house down the street that's comparable to yours, it has not sold in 60, 90 days, then you know that it's not in the right price range. Or vice versa, if you look at it, a house that's contingent and it was on the market for 1 day, then they may have been a little underpriced because there's a demand for that product. So in my competitive mindset, I want to be in that middle range to where I can sell in 30 days, not sit on the market 90, but also not underprice my product and have it sell too quickly. And then you're leaving money on the table.
And I feel like that's just something that is learned with experience, right? Like the pricing and how to know, like the
Right.
more you do it.
Yeah, it's with anything, right? The more you do it, the better you become at it. But yeah, there's not like a straightforward formula at all, right? So I've gone to like classes that appraisers have put on and stuff to where, because the bank goes out and prices a property as well. So, and that's all they do is run comparable property. So I've gone to like classes that appraisers have put on, and I try to kind of model mine off of what the appraisers are doing, because even if we shoot for the stars and we go under contract for a very higher price than every other house in the neighborhood, an appraiser is going to come in, and that's when you're going to run into issues once you go under contract. So it's just a kind of a fine line little game.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you do get better at it with experience. Like, it doesn't take me as long to do now, right? Okay, is there going to be a market crash?
If I've become quite the economic dork here in the last couple of years. I don't believe there's going to be a crash. If there is a lull, we're in it right now. We've seen sales drop dramatically. We've seen the amount of buyers decrease.
Well, interest rates went up
all because
dramatically.
of interest rates. There's not a lack of home buyers. There's just a lack of buyers that can afford the product because money costs too much right now.
But then you also run into an inventory issue, right? Because same thing, people that are not just like first-time home buyers, like not wanting to go buy right now because the rates are really high. The people that are in a home right now with a 2% interest rate are not wanting to sell and move into something with a higher, right? They're kind of sitting on that interest rate and waiting, right? Dealing with it. They might need to move or something, but it's something that you can handle it for now to not have that payment jump.
Right. And like in the market that we're in here in Montana, things are steady. They're not as crazy as they were a couple years ago, but it's not as bad as it was, or our slowdown is not as bad as it was in 2008 when the crash was actually caused by the mortgage companies. So I think now is the low point, in my opinion. Take it for what it's worth. The interest rate is going down, and it's going to be going down for foreseeable future. Inflation is at the highest that we've ever seen it in our generation. Obviously, our dad talks about when he bought his house, it was 18% interest, but we did hit in the mid-8s, which is the highest I've seen it in the last 20 years. So I do think we're at the bottom and we're coming up, and then that's my opinion. I'm not a financial advisor or
an attorney or an
attorney. My humble 25 years of real estate experience is all that's worth. So I do think now is the time to buy, because your inventory prices are as low as they're going to be. The rates are coming down, and there's inventory. What happens is when the rates are, they dip down in that fives and the inventory starts going away, like Cozi said, that rush to buy is going to be there. So your inventory is going to go low, your
prices are going to go up.
So your supply goes down and your prices go up. So, and right now in the home building industry, prices have cooled, but our commodities are still low. So we're able to sell our houses a little lower. When I say your commodities, I'm saying lumber, your plastic goods, stuff like that. So we're able to keep those prices low to where when that demand goes higher, those lumber prices skyrocket. The timber company will come up with some crazy forest fires in Canada.
I do have a question for you on this is my own personal question for you. So when COVID hit, rates dropped, all that happened, commodity prices skyrocketed.
They skyrocketed.
Right? Lumber, whatever. And now you're saying commodity prices are down. Are they down to pre-COVID prices?
They are.
Okay.
They're a little higher probably, but the pre-COVID prices, they doubled.
Right.
The commodities doubled. Supply chains, all of that kind of stuff, we couldn't get any materials, so the prices just skyrocketed. And it's just a simple supply and demand issue that causes all of that.
Okay, so now we're going to go kind of into new construction.
All right.
So, is it difficult to build a house? How much harder is it than buying an existing home?
I wouldn't say it's harder. I think there's pros and cons. The cons we'll start with, there's a longer wait period, right? You're not in that 30 to 45 day range. From design to finish, you're 6 to 8 months to get a final home. You're also, dealing with the unknowns, the interest rates, and the things there. The pros are you're getting a brand new home, not a used home. Right? So I'm allergic to cats. So I would never go into an existing home and my eyes well up and be like, yeah, this is my dream home.
Move on.
Right. You get to pick all your finishes. You get to, pick the floor plan that fits you the best. The financing's a little more tricky. Just depending on the builder that you're working with, normally I carry the financing. So you just have to qualify for the end loan like you're buying an existing home. Some builders, make you want.
You've even also done it other ways, though. It just kind of depends on as the person buying the house, what's the best option for you? Because there are other financing options.
There are other financing options, so the developer can subordinate lots for your 20% down. If you have a house to sell, then the bank will attach a lien to your home for that 20%. So then when Cozi lists your house, then we can schedule that time to close that house and move in simultaneously to the new house. So there's a lot of creative ways and fun ways to do it. I wouldn't say it's hard.
It's just
a different process, which we've dialed in over the last 10 years.
You have a question?
Well, I have a question to kind of follow up with the home building process, because you guys, obviously you're listing agents and you, Levi, are the home builder.
Right.
So how does that work when you're building the home? Levi, are you acting as the realtor as well, or does Cozi do that? Is there any conflict of interest there? Does that kind of make sense?
No. So when Levi's building a home, I'm the realtor.
Okay.
Right.
So I have to put up with him as a client.
Right. Yeah. And again, remember, everything is negotiable. So some people will come without a realtor and we just don't price in realtor fees.
No. So, or like Levi will represent himself.
Right.
And I'll represent.
Which is normally the way it goes.
Right.
Because I represent myself way better than Cozi.
So do you recommend having a realtor for buying a new home?
I do.
I
absolutely.
recommend for having a realtor for buying it.
There's a lot more pitfalls in new construction, so having an agent there to protect you is super, super important. Again, there's good ones and there's bad ones. So
yeah, do your research, meet a couple different, find who you're most comfortable with, and
right, because your agent's going to be representing you through the whole process. As a home builder, you're still our client. We still want to take care of you, but like we're not going to help you through your financing. We're not going to help you through
right. Well, help through the financing of like, hey, here's kind of the direction,
right,
and then that kind of thing. But yeah, you want someone in your corner that knows what's going on and what they're doing to kind of, just like in anything, to be an advocate for you.
Right. It's super important to have somebody looking out for your best interest.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Did that answer your question?
Yeah, definitely.
So I think we kind of touched on everything that I had questions for. Do you guys have any other questions?
Yeah, I'll have a question. I just want to touch on the whole realtor thing again, because, well, I mean, right now it's super, like, it's in the news everywhere.
It's a hot
like,
button,
yeah,
for sure.
should you do this? Should you not do this? And I'm not a realtor. I'm not a home builder. So being someone else, I have noticed that I feel like it's extremely important to have a realtor on your side. Have either one of you ever been in a deal where you were the realtor for
one party
and the other party didn't have a real estate agent? How did that work out? I mean, was there hiccups
I'm sure
and stuff?
you sold some for sale by
Yeah, I've represented some buyers that bought a house that was for sale by owner, and we got through it.
Did you feel like you had to do more work than normal?
Yeah, yeah, right. Because you're explaining, you're right. You're not representing them, but you want them to know, like, hey, I sent this form. This is what it says. Right?
In our home building process, we never do it so Cozi will always represent the buyers, and I always represent myself, because we want to make sure everybody's covered on all bases and everyone's taken care of. And to me, that's super important to make sure that everybody's well represented and know the legalities
and comfortable, right? And yeah, you just need someone in your corner that really knows what's like the ins and outs and what's going on. And like a lot of real estate, which is funny, is like keeping track of dates, right? Like if you miss a date, you have to, like, it's like, oh my God. So
I feel like the media, everything you see on TV is like, oh, being a realtor is so easy and it's a piece of cake. Well, that's
sunset.
That's because like that means that you have used a good realtor in the past and they know what they're doing, because you are doing a huge business deal.
Yeah, and I will say, kind of throughout my career, I've kind of struggled with that on if to where you'll close on a house and the people will be like, oh, so easy. And it's like really all this stuff was going on in the background that I handled that you didn't even need to know about. So, but then it's like you also don't want to like get people in an uproar when it's like not a huge deal, and you can get through it, but it's yeah. So just know that even if it feels like it was a super easy process, it's because people are handling it in the background for you.
It probably wasn't.
Right. When you bought your house, did you use a realtor?
Yeah. Well,
The
my
good
first
looking
house.
one. Yeah.
My first house, yes.
Right.
Yeah.
My second house, no. It was like
it was
like very, I don't even think we all went to the closing together or anything.
Yeah.
I mean, it was very.
Your first one, you had the good looking realtor.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
We had a great realtor on our first house. So my husband could grow his corn.
Which we never got.
He never.
He never grew his corn?
No, he never grew any.
Well, guys, I think we had great questions.
Yeah.
I think we
Do you have
should
any more
this again.
questions?
I do kind of have one more just to maybe end things.
Yeah.
So there's like in Billings, there's what, like 1,200 realtors or something?
1,200, something like that.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, so there's a
And
lot.
500 houses on the market.
Right.
Yeah, 500 houses. There's 1,200 realtors trying to sell 500 houses.
Right.
So how do you, there's so many of them. Everybody probably knows a realtor
Yeah.
or has
Or
a
is
family
related
member
to
that's,
one,
or is,
or-
yeah.
or is a friend or a family member with one.
Yeah.
So like how should people think about looking for a realtor and how do you choose
I
the right
think
one?
that people should meet with as many as you can, right? Have a list of questions of what's important to you, and you interview them,
Right.
right?
And don't be afraid to ask them questions because they're there to answer your questions. They're
Right.
there for the whole process and beyond. You want to feel comfortable with them. You want to have that rapport with them, and because it should be a long relationship. So experience is important.
And we even just experienced it ourselves. We had to sell a house in North Dakota, and neither one of us are licensed in North Dakota, so we had to find a real estate agent, and it was hard.
Yeah, it was hard. Yeah.
And it was just like,
You went through a few of them
yeah.
because I didn't do much of the interview.
Yeah, typical, but yeah, I talked to a few different ones that kind of like vibed it out,
Right.
and I did. I asked questions and like, what would you, right? Like, what's your tactic to do this? How would you want to, right? And then I just found the one that I felt was the most of what I was looking for in representing me.
And
on
we
this sale.
get this a lot, right? Because Cozi's personality is different than my personality. So like when we have a client, like John, you and I would probably mesh well, right? Like my communication style is like really short, to the point, right? Like we're both busy, we're in a hurry, and you just want the information, right? And I type like I talk, like I text like I talk. It's
I
short
feel like,
and quick.
are you saying I'm long-winded?
No, I'm getting to that. Where Angie would probably like if she interviewed us, Cozi's warmer. She's gonna I don't want to say coddle, but she's gonna finesse that situation a little more to where they're probably gonna vibe more. So like even when like I meet somebody at an open house, I'll bring Cozi in and be like, Cozi, you need to meet with these people because I feel like your style is gonna mesh with them a little better than mine. Just because I'm a little, I don't want to come off abrupt, but I'm also not as soft as Cozi is in that communication style. Because you have to feel comfortable during the whole process. And the client has to feel comfortable asking those questions, even though if they think they're dumb questions, they're questions, that's what's in their,
Yeah, no question is a dumb question.
Right,
in
right. And
this
they need
process,
to feel comfortable during the whole process, and that agent needs to communicate with them in a way to make them comfortable with them.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's a huge benefit that like they get both of you, because both of you are super experienced,
Right.
and everything. So
And
even
and
if they,
different, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And to where like most people like me and not Levi, it's fine.
That's why I get all the clients. But this was super fun. We'll do this again. I think we'll cover different topics. We'll cover investment properties. We'll cover commercial, home. We can do a whole thing on home building. So I think we'll try to do this once a week or every 2 weeks, and hopefully everybody enjoyed it. We appreciate anybody who watches it, and thank you again.